their greed is allowing them to carry on and justifying their actions, but it's unjust. Yeah. And it just takes somebody to stand up. We cultivate self-knowledge, self-mastery, and self-realization so we can put our strongest side forwards. We can put our highest side forwards, right? So that, therefore, implicitly becomes our way of life, our martial way. If you release that, just do the best you can. That way, hopefully, you'll be able to inspire, educate, inspire, and empower somebody else to do the same. And if that happens, and all of this wave of consciousness spreads, the world will start transforming.
Welcome everybody to another Martial Mind Power podcast. I'm Jatinder with Sifu Lak, and we're going to be talking about standing up for a right cause. And Sifu Lak, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How about you?
Yeah, good. Thanks. So yeah, it's been an interesting one. So I was sitting down, reminiscing back to when I used to be doing martial arts quite a bit. And I remember sitting down, and it would have been some time after I had actually gone for a grading and had my black belt. We sat down, the sensei was in front of us, and he was just having a conversation with the students. And he was asking a white belt, saying like, how do you feel? And they're like, oh yeah, I'm excited. I want to do this. I want to learn all the martial arts, all these kind of things, learn to fight and whatnot. And he was just going through the different colors, asking everybody their opinion. Everybody's giving their thoughts and just their thoughts on the matter. Then they got to like the black belts, and he was asking us guys, like, what are your thoughts? And we're like, I don't know. It's like, the thought was that we know we're learning this. The reason we got into it was because we wanted to study how to fight, defend ourselves. And now that we've learned these things, there's no desire to fight. Do you know what I mean? And he was sharing his thoughts about it, saying like how, when you have a white belt, it's like you're fresh, you're just learning. And as you go through, the kind of representation is that as the white belt used to get more used, it gets darker and darker with like dust and wear and tear and whatnot, until you get to state when it's black, and that would represent that, it's like, it's not even a sense of confusion anymore. It's just like, that's just what it is. And it just got me wondering, like, in life, yeah, we go through stuff like, we learn martial arts, we want to fight against the bully, not even fight against the bully, to defend ourselves against the bully, all right? And the whole element of a warrior is, when you look at an honorable warrior, is come from the whole kind of thing about protecting others, defending rights, standing up for something. And it was interesting to think about that and think about everything that's going on in the world at the moment, and how it just seems all weird at the moment. And we've got cancel culture going on. We've got political correctness going on. We've got left to right wings and all these kind of things. And it's like, it's almost very difficult to find one's grounding and stand on things. Yeah. So that brought up the question about like, all right, what is a good way to deal with what's going on in the world generally? Yeah. When is it a right time to stand up for something? Yeah. And how far would one potentially have to go in order to get a rightful act together, right? Something that one of the Sikh gurus said that comes to mind, just to paraphrase, it was something along the lines of, when all means to right or wrong have failed, it is just to pick up the sword. And I find that very inspiring, because it's like encouraging you not to do anything and only pick up the sword when you really, 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 really have to, right? Yeah. So it's that's the long kind of deep philosophical thoughts around it. And so what can we talk about in regards to that?
So what I'm hearing is that you've got all of these considerations. I'm not going to say concerns, but considerations in your mind, in your mind's eye, about what I would call the socio-politico, economo, technological environment, okay? And all of the kind of in factions, inequalities, injustice, indifferences that are happening within that landscape, right? That we journey through our lifetime that affect us in some way or another. Mm-hmm. And how do we navigate through that environment with all the good and the bad that's happening, and essentially act in our highest power, and if possible, try and make this a better place to be in. Am I right?
Yeah. I mean, it's a kind of undertone. There are a lot of people feeling that at the moment as well, you know, and I think it'd be a good topic just to bring the martial element into it, because that's where all this martial mind power stuff has spawned from, right? From, defending the rights of other people and yourselves, and then not causing harm to others and being honorable and all that kind of stuff. So yeah.
So here's the thing. In this podcast, let's do this. Let's not go into any specific type of problems, okay? Mm. Because if we do that, if we go into social problems, go to political problems, we go to economical problems, we go into technological problems, what's going to happen is that's going to draw our audience into that whirlwind of issues that surround that certain silo, right? Yeah. And if that happens, what happens is people get locked into that. Mm. Now, what we want to do, I think in this podcast, I think it's important. What we should do is make sure that we operate and fly above all of this mess and chaos at 30,000 feet. Because if we don't do that, then we're going to lose sight of the big picture, and we're going to get drawn and sucked into the detail and the depths of all the problems and not be able to see the wood for the trees. Right. Yeah. So let's get into our jets and ascend to 30,000 feet for now. Yeah. And from this level, right, we can see everything. So if you're sitting there worried about things, concerned about things, and in an unresourceful state, maybe you've got certain negative emotions. And again, we don't want to go too much into the negative emotions, right? Is how, we're assuming that with concerns within the socio-political, economic, technological landscape, that there are problems, right? And we all, are familiar with some problems more than other problems, but we know problems exist. But if we start to latch on to the negative emotions, then we're not going to be able to detach and get to that 30,000 feet, right? So let's, for a moment, not talk about the negative emotions as well for the moment, okay? And let's rise to 30,000 feet and say, okay, what's happening here, okay? First of all, there's this element of how do we apply our martial arts mindset to life and the problems that life entails down on the ground zero, okay? We're looking down 30,000 feet and we can see all this chaos going on, what's happening. So you mentioned the first thing, right, is through martial arts practice, right? Traditionally, right, the jujitsukas and the judokas and the Japanese martial arts, where the belt system came from, right, actually didn't have any colored belts apart from white. There was only white belt, and white belt was it. There was no ranking. There was no different grading systems at all. And like you said, when that white belt got really murky and dirty, it kind of resembled black, representing persistence, perseverance, and practice. Okay. And only through those 3 Ps do you attain mastery. Right. Now, mastery, we're talking about mastery in 3 elements. You got physical mastery, the mastery over your body in a combative sense, in a fitness sense, in a health sense. You got your mental mastery, which is mastering your mind, keeping your mind emotionally resilient and adaptable to navigate through life and the environments that we're seeing down below on ground zero, where all the problems exist. And And then you got your spiritual mastery is cultivating your spiritual insight, so you really can connect to your true higher self. Now, what's all that about? And we've talked about this before, is about really aligning your body, your mind, and your spirit stack. So you've got complete alignment. So you know who you are, why you're part of Mother Earth, and how you are here, in what capacity you are here to serve everyone on Mother Earth, including all sentient beings and Mother Earth herself. Okay. Now, through this white belt turned murky and black, one thing we're realizing here is that we got to take those lessons from the dojo and start applying them right in our mindset. So when you go into a competition, for example, there is no person that I know, right, that is human that hasn't felt anxiety going into competition, that hasn't felt anxiety going into a sparring match with somebody, okay? Whether there's rules or not, everybody feels anxiety, right? And because it's a natural physiological response, okay? Now, what that is teaching us, actually, in life, there are going to be things that we're going to be anxious to do, things that entail change, things that entail things that are going to worry you, and you don't know how to approach that, how to deal with that. And that emotion is exactly the same as you stepping into that competition, stepping into that sparring match. You're already trained to deal with fear by stepping into the arena. Let's face it. So when you're already cultivating that, you're learning how to overcome your own fears. You say, the biggest fear is the fear of fear itself, right? So once you overcome that, then you start to then deal with what's happening in that moment, in that competition. Because if you're thinking about something else, guess what? That's an apt time you get punched in the face or you get taken down, right? And that's it. So you're constantly dealing with overcoming challenges. Okay, so if we use that as a minute example on application of how we take the dojo to daily life, to mindset, sorry, what that mindset is also saying is actually we can apply that to daily life, because in daily life there's these challenges present themselves. So we're now risen and cruising at 30,000 feet. You look down and you think, okay, this whole landscape is full of all these socio-political, economic, technological problems, right? And there's challenges within that, and there's fear within that, okay? How do you deal with that? How do you deal with that, okay? And if you try and take it all on, it's unrealistic. It's unrealistic because one person can only do so much, okay? All right. And really the question is to understand, how much can you do, okay? How much can you do? Martial arts tells you one thing. First and foremost is know yourself. Secondly is know your enemy. Third, know your environment, okay? And only then can you navigate and gain mastery, right, in your journey, okay? So this is where martial arts actually starts to become embodiment of everything in your life. It's not just about your opponent that you're trying to beat. It actually starts with you. You don't know how to combat your opponent, how to beat your opponent, how to overcome your challenges. If you don't know yourself, you don't know your strengths, you don't know your weaknesses. If you play your weaknesses out in the ring, in a competition, you're sure to put your worst side forwards, and it gives you the lowest chance of success. So why would you do that? So here's the thing, right? We cultivate self-knowledge, self-mastery, and self-realization, so we can put our strongest side forwards. We can put our highest side forwards, right? So that, therefore, implicitly becomes our way of life, our martial way, right? As Mandalorian says, he says, it's the way. And it's understanding that you're constantly having to take that warrior mindset, that martial mindset, and carry that with you. Okay. Now, What does
no,
that
definitely. Like, I mean, when
where
you're
things
sharing,
get a bit fuzzy? You go on. You got a question, right?
it's almost like seems that the first thing we got to get an awareness of is our own thoughts, because like something could be going on. It could be anything going around you. But the first thing that happens is your own thoughts that come into your mind. So the combat starts straight away. The combat's going on with your own thoughts. You're battling with those, right? Because a thought is something crazy, which can basically make you not do anything if it becomes overwhelming, right? And the situation outside could be totally different. So we're projecting our own nonsense, our own stuff first as well. And that's the bit you're talking about there about, your thoughts, your self-realization, know yourself first, because to become aware of the thoughts in your own mind first, right?
It's more than thoughts. It's much more than thoughts. And I'll tell you why. So the Master Your Life process is built around 9 stages, right? So we've mentioned the book before. And I want to just show you the table that we've got here. And so it talks about on page 11, the 9 stages. What are the 9 stages of self-mastery, okay? And it goes over to page 12 as well. Now, just to give you a high level, right? First one starts with your thoughts, right? So ultimately, you've got to try and hone your thoughts, right? So stage 1 is stillness. So how do you become calm, right, within the chaos? And I constantly refer to it as stepping into the eye of the storm. While the storm is swirling around you, the eye of the storm is where everything's zen. Okay, you can therefore see what's going on around you and make an informed decision about what you need to do next. Second thing is about emptying your mind. Okay, the idea about emptying your mind is a lot of times people already have preconceived notions about how they're going to deal with a thing. Now, a preconceived notion is just you doing what you already do. Now, let's face it. If we carry on doing what we've already been doing, when we're looking down, right, at ground zero from our 30,000 feet view, and we carry on doing what we're doing, those problems are not going to go away. They're going to persist, right? Because we're not changing anything. You do the same thing, you get the same result. To do something, to get a different result, you need to do something different, right? So this is where, we've got to start with an empty vessel. We need to empty our mind of any preconceived notions about how we're going to tackle a thing, right? The next thing is the third stage is possess an eagle eye. And this is about really starting to see what's going on. Now, too many people are looking. They're looking at problems. They're focusing with tunnel vision, right? So they've really got narrow gaze. Right? This is the problem here. This is the problem here. This is the problem here. Don't look, see. When you see things holistically. When you see things holistically, you start to really gauge what actually is going on. And actually, sometimes what you thought you was looking at isn't what it actually is. It could be lesser than it is. It could be more than it is. It could be completely different to what you thought it was. But unless you actually start to see rather than look, you're going to be blindsided because you don't have the whole picture. So possess an eagle eye is about seeing. Seeing is not trying to look and focus on certain things, is allowing yourself to absorb what's happening in and around you. You look down at that 30,000 feet below you, see the issues going on, right? Then you've got the next stage, right? Which is stage 4. This is what I call think and become. And this is really about, now you start to see stuff. Now you need to start to muster some confidence and courage, okay? In order to start taking some action. You haven't decided yet, but you start to take some action, yeah? To build up that confidence, to start to build up some belief that, that you're able to do something about it. Right? There are problems. You can see the problems, but are you willing and do you have enough self-belief and confidence to take positive action? Right? Then the next stage is, before you start to take action, is stage 5. And that we call wata, right? Wata. Now that is about mastering your fears. So before you start to take action, you need to start overcoming your own self. Get yourself out of the way. This is yourself in fear. Say, excuse me, just stand to one side. Let me through. Okay. Get out your own way. Okay. Get out your own way. Simple as that. Obviously, there's a lot more involved to do that. Go to the book and there's tons of exercises in there for you to do. But once you got yourself out of the way, then move forward. Then comes a real part of it. So the first 5 stages up to Wata is about your internal process, what's happening inside you. Yeah. Then the 6th stage is when you start to come out. Okay. That means you start to express yourself outwardly, right? From yourself inwardly. So it's internal to external expression through and translating that into action into the outward manifest world. And that 6th stage is called honesty, expressing yourself. Now, a lot of this is around communication, right? You've got these problems down at ground zero. Yeah. How are you going to talk about these problems without getting yourself in a tiz, let alone somebody else? If you can't manage your own emotional resilience and intelligence, then you're definitely not going to be able to talk to somebody about an issue. And again, there's so many problems that we could talk about that in the world that I don't even want to mention any one of them, which I nearly just did, right? Right. So remember the rules.
You fill in the gaps yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So it starts to come out. Right, you start to express yourself, you start to act, all right, you start to move, you start to create movement through energy, motion, energy in motion. Yeah. Then you've got the 7th stage, right? Now the 7th stage is what we call be like water. Once you start to act, right? Initially, what's going to happen is when you start to do stuff, you might strain and have resistance against the thing. When that happens, it becomes struggle. It becomes really hard. Right? Now, you don't want that at all. You want to say, no, I want to choose the path of fluidity and flow. Okay. I don't want to strain. Strain is not the way. I want to get into a state of flow. Okay. So when you talk to somebody about a thing you believe in, something you want to change, it should flow. And when you talk to that person, it's a symbiotic, harmonious, fluid conversation. They become part of you and you start to dance together, make music together in conversation, in ideas where you can collectively educate, inspire, and empower somebody to potentially move in a positive direction that you're trying to do. Okay. Then you've got number 8. Let's do this right. Yeah. So number 8 is, in order to create maximum impact and utility, you need to put your best side forward, your strongest side forward. So that this chapter is called Power Side Forwards. And it's really about talking about your strengths. How can you apply your strengths to create a positive impact and positive transformation, right? In an area that you're trying to heal, right? And an area that you're trying to heal. So what is that? How are you going to do that? Because if you don't have any skill, any knowledge, any information, right, in an area that you're trying to improve, you're not equipped to go start babbling in that domain because you're not qualified. What are your skills? Where is your experience? Where does your knowledge and wisdom lie? Then apply it. So if you don't have it, then you know that there's a gap. You need to go close that gap by gaining that necessary tools that you need. So then you can go have maximum effect in the area that you're trying to heal. And finally, right, it's the 9th stage, right, which is stage 9, and that is once you start to impact positive change, you need to keep it there. Okay. You don't want to let it drop. You want to keep it going. You want to either maintain it or help it continue to improve. So chapter 9 is about staying ahead. Is how do you understand if you're behind? How can you get on point? And if you're on point, how do you get ahead? When you get ahead, how do you stay ahead? It's really important. Now, this is the simplified version of the 9 stages of self-mastery applied to using a martial mindset to heal a problem that exists in the world or heal the world's problems, whichever way you want to look at it, right? But it starts with you and it ends with you. And it's only you that can make the difference. All change happens and starts and finishes with you. There is nobody else. But what happens when you start to make impact positive change? People look at you and think, wow, that's amazing. How are you doing that? How can I help? I want to be part of this. And what starts to happen is this ripple of consciousness starts to spread. And as it starts to spread, right, more people get moved by this ripple of consciousness, by this wave of consciousness, right? And all of this energy starts to move people in that direction. Now, to do this, right? Yeah, there's a lot of people here that say, well, you know what? This is outside of my power. There's lots of systems and powerful people and organizations. And again, I'm not going to refer specifically to any particular type, right? Because remember, we're not focusing on the problem and the negative emotions. But by doing that, just remember that you're absolving yourself of responsibility for making your existence an existence for your family and friends and fellow human beings, your fellow human family on this Mother Earth, perpetually painful as it is with all the current problems that exist. So the idea, therefore, is just to do the best you can. It's really simple. The problem by being really simple is very hard to do because your mind gets caught in emotion. Okay. If you release that, just do the best you can. That way, hopefully you'll be able to inspire, educate, inspire, and empower somebody else to do the same. And if that happens, and all of this wave of consciousness spreads, the world will start transforming. They say if 20,000 people, right, action the same change at the same moment in time, that ripple of consciousness will have a unanimous effect over the whole globe. Over the whole globe, just 20,000 people actioning the same change could create that ripple of consciousness. But that starts with one person, right? But let's imagine that 20,000, that 1% change, 1% of the world's population could impact and change and transform everything. Okay.
Yeah. It reminds me of this viral video. I don't know if you saw it. There was some festival going on. People were sitting down and one guy got up and he went in the middle and he just kind of started dancing around on his own. Just started dancing around. Yeah. Just on his own, he's dancing. He didn't care. He just went there, started dancing. All of a sudden, somebody else joined him. Right. And all of a sudden, somebody else joined in. All of a sudden, somebody else. All of a sudden, everybody in that little space started dancing.
Yeah.
Because of this one person's courage, you can call it, just to get up and just do it. Had that, like you were saying, like you're sharing about that small percentage that actually do it. That it took somebody. You could say it was like he did it for fun, maybe, right? Yeah. Or you could say that somebody took the courage to do something. And as soon as somebody else saw it, it's almost like a herd mentality kind of thing kicks in as well, right? To say, well, one person can do it, surely we can do that. And then you kind of, like you said, you inspire, you wake up the light in others to do that as well. Absolutely. And that one person can, Mike and I, one man can make a difference.
What you're talking about there is something a good friend of mine back in the day when we used to go out partying, go out for a night in the town. One of my friends, he used to be the first on the dance floor, and he had like a whole science behind this, and his whole science was based around, he called his science critical mass theory, right? and so here's the idea: you're in a club, you're in a nightclub, right? And the dance floor is empty because everything's building up, and what happens is there's more and more people, and the place starts filling up. right? And it gets to a point, and this point is that point that he calls critical mass. And this is what happens. He used to be the first one to go on the dance floor. And he earned the name Dancing Queen as a consequence of that, right? He used to be the first person to go on the dance floor. I am not kidding you. Within a minute, that dance floor would be full. And he would say, Lak, this is the thing. It's all about critical mass. You when you get the club to a point where, you know, there's enough people, it just takes one person to break that surface, right? Break that surface tension to go in there, and then everyone goes in. Now, if you notice, actually, a lot of this is happening within our environment. If you're looking down, you know, remember, we're still cruising at 30,000 feet. Look down, right, at the world, look at all the problems, and you just think, actually, there's been a breakthrough, right? That critical mass has been pierced, yeah? That tension, that surface tension has been pierced in many different arenas, right? All right. So what kind of arenas are we talking about? So this is where we can start talking about the positive impacts, right, that we're making on the planet, right? Which therein had some, you know, negative effect that we're trying to overcome, trying to heal on the planet and people and the animals and plants and so on. And one of those is electric vehicles, for instance, right? Right. It took someone like Elon Musk, right, to pierce the tension, right, on that surface, right, to kind of burst that critical mass, so people started to flood in and start to take up and become early adopters of electric vehicles, right? Before then, there were other manufacturers that were doing electric vehicles, but they didn't take off.
It was Michael Knight, man. He influenced it. He planted the seeds.
Elon Musk is Michael Knight, man. He waited for critical mass, and he built up the critical mass with Tesla, right? To the point now, Tesla is accepted and is an industry leader in electric vehicles, an industry leader in innovation, right? And he's got positive intent behind it, right? Okay. Now, you know, some people might say, well, but what about the batteries when they, you know, they'll figure out a way to recycle the batteries and to reclaim that lithium and so on. But, you know, when you innovate something, there's going to be a new set of problems that you create that you also need to deal with, right? And this is part of evolution. You can't always have everything good. There's going to be something that's going to counterbalance that. So it evolves, and now you face a different set of challenges as the landscape changes. Remember, the one thing people fear the most is change. The thing with change is constant. It does not stop. It keeps going. Everything changes, right? And
we're talking about change there, like when we're talking about Elon Musk there, I remember listening to one of his interviews, and he was talking about how, you know, they asked him, how did you manage to do this? And he said, we just looked at it from a new lens to say, well, what are the parts we need? Where can we get them for? What needs to be done? We just bypassed everything else and just kind of went direct and started doing it in that way. And I suppose the norm kind of thing would have been that, you know, there's this big, gigantic organization, which was obviously NASA, right? They've been around for years, and they've got a way of doing things, and they've been leading the way. Sometimes any company, it's happened to loads of companies, different spheres, where they've gone down a track, they know what they know, they're good at what they do, and all of a sudden somebody else comes along and just says, why don't we just do it like this?
Yeah.
Right. And them are like, oh, why didn't we ever think about that? Because that train of thought has been almost conditioned to go down that train, whereas there's another train available which we've never looked at. And that's what happens. That's what disruption is all about, right? It's just looking at it in a new, fresh way.
And here's the thing. Remember, step 2 is empty your mind. If you don't empty your mind, you project your preconceived notions and ideas on a problem that already exists. You're never going to see things a new way, right? You're never going to get to that point of possessing an eagle eye where you can see everything. And with everything, we love Marilyn's famous quote, notice what you noticed, right?
Yeah.
Right. You'll notice something that's always been there, but you never really noticed it. And you just think, bloody hell, right? The answer was right under our noses. We just didn't notice it, right? So it's wonderful that you've said that, because that is talking directly to that point, isn't it?
Exactly. Alex, I just wanted to touch on the psychology of this thing as well, where it's like you were talking about your friend on the dance floor, right? Like there's nobody there, he's coming, and then there's a shift because other people are seen and now they're joined in, right? Like if we look at the psychology of that, it does take something like almost like a different way of thinking to be able to make that movement, to make that step, right? And then when you actually do it, we share that it's almost like other people are drawn to that, right? So what would you say? Like, why does it then make it okay for other people to say, oh, hang on a minute, oh, we can do this? Like, is it just because they've never thought of it? Do you think it's just because all the other, it's that precognition stuff, right? They're programmed to think they can't do it another way.
Do you know, that's a great question. And I think it boils down to, let's bring the martial mindset back into this, right? There's, in the art of thinking without thinking, right? There's on page 55, one of the koans is spineless backbone. Okay. So this is an image. It's an Asian painting on parchment from the looks of things. Okay. Of a warrior on a dragon. Okay. And a really colorful, adorned warrior. And this koan is really simple. And it just says, self-defense is the backbone of all martial arts. Without it, the martial art is spineless. Okay. So what does that mean? This means you need to have the courage, right, to innovate. You need to have the courage to disrupt a current system, right, and introduce something new that's going to have a beneficial impact on the world. Okay. On the world. So you need to have that backbone. In my social circle, right, I don't keep close anyone that doesn't have a backbone. Why? Because I want people that have honesty, integrity, right, and honor, right? They need to have that. It's fundamental. It's one of my fundamental, some of my fundamental values, right? It's all, if you look back at the Bushido code, right, is all there. That's what we're talking about, is carrying that martial mindset, right, through into life, and also carrying it into situations where you're looking to trying to make things better. But in order to make things better, you need to act. In order to act, you need to have courage, right? In order to have courage, you need to put yourself, be vulnerable. To be vulnerable means that you're exposed and you potentially could get hurt and get hit, right? In order to get hurt and hit, you need to get into the arena. And you've heard the man in the arena, right? And that man in the arena is in here. I don't know. Let's see if I can find it.
No, that's fabulous. While we're looking for that, it's that the whole idea of that, empty your mind and then have the courage to have that conversation, to think differently and present the ideas so that other people become alert to it, even, because sometimes it's that thing, isn't it? Yeah, you don't know your condition when you don't know your condition. It's like if you are not exposed to the idea of something, then you may not ever go down that route. But as soon as that idea opens up for you, it can open up a whole new gateway to a whole new arena of things. I mean, let's take cycling, for example. When I started learning about cycling, oh my goodness, like all the stuff that goes with it, I had no idea that stuff existed. And it just meant that, I was able to grow in that space just because we came across the idea of it, right?
Absolutely. You had to overcome all of those new learnings, figure out how it all works, the new clothing, getting out there, practicing, pacing, doing your 50-mile legs on your, Birmingham to London charity rides and so on. That's massive, man. Someone that has never done long rides like that before and then trains up to that is huge. So Man in the Arena is on page 533 in The Art of Thinking Without Thinking.
So what was that, 533, did you say?
Yeah, 533. And it's a picture of a stadium. an arena, basically, right? And he's manning the arena. And this section is based on the work of Brené Brown, right? On her talk on listening to shame. And I'd like to read this because it kind of really puts into context. If you want to facilitate positive change within the world, right, rather than just look at stuff from the outside, right, actually go in,
become a player.
Yeah, become a player. Yeah. Yes. Become a player, people. Wisdom. Right?
Play the game.
Right. So it goes: secrecy, silence, and judgment breed shame. Empathy dissolves shame. Vulnerability is a path to opening up and sitting in the danger, allowing yourself to grow in the incubator of adversity. Theodore Roosevelt summed it up beautifully in this quote. So this is a quote by Theodore Roosevelt that was quoted by Brené Brown on her talk in Listening to Shame. So it goes like this: it is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. Boom. Yeah. Right. So
that's amazing.
If that doesn't move you, I don't know what is going to move you. If that doesn't inspire you to move, I don't know what's going to inspire you to move. And, you know, we don't have to make a massive difference. It's just you do the change, right? You make your change, right? And again, we're not going to prescribe what you can do. We've talked about stuff in other podcasts to facilitate positive impact. But it's for you to think, what can I do? What small change can I make to make a big difference? Okay. As I say, this it's the small things that make the big difference. Yeah. So be mindful of that and keep going. And I want to go back to something that you said about, you know, when you unsheath the sword, right? Now, there's a saying in our guru's sayings. One of them is talwar khoon mangdi, right? In other words, talwar means sword. In other words, when you unsheath the sword demands blood. Okay. Now, here's the thing. Your consciousness, right? You as a consciousness are sharpening your sword of consciousness throughout your life. Okay. Right. By learning martial arts through your body, through your mind, through your emotions, through your spirit. Okay. Now, when you get to a point, and this is coming back to you, when you said you became a black belt in jiu-jitsu, and at that point, you know, you went into jiu-jitsu because you wanted to learn how to fight. But at the end of it, you came out kind of thinking, actually, I don't need to fight now, right? Something shifted, right? Do you want to tell me what shifted?
Interesting. I think the simplest way I can describe it is just that I must have watched that Bruce Lee film along the way, right? The Art of Fighting Without Fighting, right? So it was just that one thing. I think I must have been the trigger for me in some way or another, where, you know, Bruce, this martial art, we know, and he's on this boat and the guy wants to fight him and he says, yeah, no problem, but we can't really fight on this boat. Let's go to the island, and just like leads him off into the boat and doesn't need to actually fight. And he won without fighting, you know? Yeah. And it's just that when it's like we think we need things in life, right? So most people will pursue their whole life looking for that thing they perceive to be missing. Yeah. But the reality of it is never been missing. It was just, we never looked. that it was there already, right? So, and that's what I think the martial art journey did for myself, is that originally I thought I needed to know how to defend myself, need to know how to fight. But more so the exercise, the element, the discipline, all that thing you learn along the way. And as you learn that, and you learn to master your emotions, right? Yeah. So the things that was there before got dissolved, because now you're thinking, well, actually, there was no fight in the first place. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So I think that's what happened for myself, was the idea that you don't need to be in conflict, that, you only really fight if you have to. You really have to, because somebody's being a bully. They're not stopping, right? And you got to stop them, take them out, right? Because they're not stopping. You're trying everything. You're going to your teachers. You've had a conversation. Unfortunately, you've had to do what you had to do, but it stopped them. Now they're going to think twice before they approach you, right? Absolutely. So it's that kind of scenario. And we're not encouraging people to go and look for fights. No way, right? You only do that if you have to do it, right? As a last resort. Yeah. Absolutely. So I think that's what basically happened. That shift is, you come across that journey, you've gone through it. I was a brilliant example with yourself, actually, Lax. I remember in one of your classes, you were teaching us a technique. It was a traditional kung fu technique, I think it was, that we did, and you told everybody to do it. And we're doing this thing with each other. We're practicing, and the partner I was with, I'm standing and doing this technique. I think, why is Lax teaching us this? This doesn't seem right to me. It just doesn't. We're learning it. And the other student was like, no, don't worry, just go, just learn it. And I'm like, okay, no problem. And then you turned around and did the next step, and you said, what I taught you, now forget it. That's not what the reason I taught you that is so to unlearn, basically. Yeah. And then you showed a more efficient way to do it, which is the way I was looking at it when I was talking to the student. Right. And so you showed a more efficient way to do it, which is more direct and just worked better. And then the other student was like, oh, how did you know that? I said, I don't know. It just felt like, you do it this way and it feels better. Right. So it's beautiful. Just like you just learn things along the way. Right.
And this is the thing, right? What's happening is you've got an intelligence. The idea is to use it, right? Not to take doctrine from anybody that's teaching you as gospel truth. The idea around any teachings is self-discovery. Those teachings, if they don't teach something about you, don't reveal something about you, then those teachings don't amount to much, to be honest, right? Martial arts is a process of self-discovery. It's a process of putting your best side forward at all times. And, if you haven't cultivated the best side, then by continually training, that best side's going to get better, right? And, in the book, Original Truth, okay? Now, this whole book is about, the strap line here is sharpening your sword of consciousness and spirit using martial arts and philosophy. This book is really about living the martial way. How do you apply yourself in daily life, living the martial way? And there's a whole section on transcending martial arts called Sword of Consciousness. And the subtitle is Transcending Martial Arts. And starts on page 38. And, it starts off by talking about sharpening your sword, sharpening your body as a sword, as a weapon, sharpening your mind as a weapon, sharpening your spirit as a weapon. But then once you are sharp, right, then there's a chapter on here, or subchapter on here, called Wielding Your Sword. And I want to just read this because I think it's apt, right? Coming back into the Talwar Kunamangdi, the quote.
Which is also a similar thing to the samurai, isn't it? The samurai code is the same as that, is that if you draw your sword, the samurai doesn't put it back unless they draw their own blood with it, right? So it's a warrior tradition. It's not just, It
is. But it's built around honor and integrity. You don't just draw a sword because someone pisses you off, right? There's got to be just reason.
And look at that in itself, like that, what you're saying there, that's just so amazing. Like, that's a discipline in itself, right? That you're teaching someone that you only use it as a last resort. And if you do, you still have to put it away by drawing your own blood if you never used it. Because that's the intention, right?
Because look, if you hurt somebody else, ultimately you're going to hurt yourself as well, right? Nobody ever wants to hurt anybody else. We are not designed to hurt people. We are designed to heal people. We are born healers, right? So cutting someone, hurting someone is not in our nature at all. at all. People might be deluded by thinking that they need to do something that is hurting other people and you need to stand up against them, right? And we're going to go on to that because there's a thing I want to teach about that, which you taught me. And I want to share it with our listeners and viewers. But before I go in there, I want to just complete this wielding your sword. And it's a really short subchapter, which just basically says your thoughts, words, and actions can be like a sharp sword being wielded recklessly. As they say, there are 5 things you cannot take back. 1, a stone after it is thrown. 2, a word once it is spoken. 3, an occasion once it is missed. 4, an action once it is done. And 5, time once it is passed. We are powerful beyond our greatest beliefs. And as Confucius said, you will never know how sharp a sword is until it is drawn from its sheath. But little do we realize how dangerous our tamest and most innocent of thoughts, words, and actions can be, often causing the gravest of harm unknowingly. Okay? So we have to be careful. And this is why conscious is all about consciousness. Right? So we're still cruising at 30,000 feet. Let me just remind all the listeners and viewers here, we're still cruising at 30,000 feet. We're looking at the chaos of socio-political, economic, technological problems down on the ground, in the world right now, and thinking, how are we going to resolve these problems? How are we going to make life better? How, we're going to get out of this mess? How I'm going to deal with all of these issues that I'm facing? Well, cultivate consciousness. But you might say, all right, well, consciousness is not going to put food on my table. Well, this is the whole thing that took food off your table, mate. Right? If you don't start changing your consciousness now, right, then there's going to be somebody else that's going to come along that is unconscious or intelligently dumb or consciously dumb, shall I say, right? That's going to take more food off your table. That's going to take your heating away or whatever else. I did say we're not going to talk about problems, but you get the idea, right? You have a responsibility to cultivate consciousness, because consciousness, right, and like anything, is infectious, right? When you're in a high state of consciousness, you infect other people and raise their vibration, right? But when somebody's in a low state of consciousness, right, and they affect other people around them and lower their vibration. So what do you want to do? Where do you want to be? Do you want to be up or you want to be down? Right? And again, we said we're not going to talk about negative emotions, but just as a continuum, do you want to be depressed or do you want to be elated and blissful? Simple, right? You've got a choice. And you have to make a choice. And that choice happens through cultivating consciousness, cultivating your body consciousness, cultivating your mind consciousness, cultivating your emotion consciousness, cultivating your spiritual consciousness. There is nothing else. Every cell of your body, every physical cell of your body has consciousness. So consciousness permeates our whole stack of mind, body, spirit. They are inseparable, right? So if you think that, the mind or even the emotion, the spiritual part of it, it's all foo-foo. Well, let's look at it again. What are you complaining about? If you had no complaints, then that's all fine. But if you are complaining and listening to this, wondering, all of these problems down on the ground exist and they're bothering me, right? And what can I do about it? Your consciousness is stirring, yeah? Every cell of your body is resonating to the problems that are happening in every corner of this world, whether you realize or not, is rippling through your body. It's permeating through your body, right? And again, without going into specifics, anything that happens in any corner of the world is your cells are feeling it. Because we are all part of this ocean of consciousness. So if you think you are separate from that, then you won't be complaining about all of this stuff, because you'd be in your own world doing your own thing and be unaffected by decisions somebody else is making for you. But that's not the case. You know it's affecting you. And the whole world is affected by all of those decisions, which is why we are here talking about this and actually taking time to put a podcast together to figure out how do we get through this in a resourceful, congruent, ecological, and high state of consciousness manner. Okay, so this is the idea. We've got to de-rust our swords of consciousness, right? We've got to unblunt our swords of consciousness. We need to sharpen them all, polish them up, and ensure that we are shiny, sharp weapons. Okay, but we need to use that. You need to use that with kindness and compassion. Without kindness and compassion, our swords are going to be slaying the wrong heads. We don't need that. We don't want that. That's not the point. Point is, we actually want to cut away the cancer, right, that exists within the world that's causing the problems. And now, again, I'm using the word cancer, not as the only problem, but as a figurative way of saying remove the problem. Yeah. Right. So hopefully you're with me on this. And in order to do that, you are it. You are it. And the person that stands next to you, right? Educate them, inspire them, and empower them. But you can only do that if you got it. Remember, one of my students, Tom McGraw, right? He said to me, he came up with his own kind. He goes, you can only give something away if you got it in the first place. Absolutely. 100%. You can't teach somebody you don't understand, something you don't understand, something you don't have, right? You must have it first before you start to, share it. So make sure you got it. Cultivate it.
Ooh, I just had some wisdom bomb popping in my mind then, Laxis. That's so interesting. Look, a person without integrity can't give you integrity.
No, 100%.
A person who's lying can't give you the truth.
No.
Right? Because they don't have it themselves. Ooh.
100%. 100%. You got it. You got it. So you have to be honest with yourself, right? Which is why we talked about in the book, right? Honestly expressing yourself. Honestly expressing yourself. I didn't say lyingly express yourself. Honestly express yourself, right? Bruce said honestly express yourself. And that's why the chapter's based around that quote. Why? Because that book's inspired by Bruce's martial art and philosophy of Jeet Kune Do, right? What we're doing is taking that martial mindset and applying it to life, okay? Let's live the martial code. If we all lived through the martial code, right, we won't be rigid, right? Remember, be like water is one of the key tenets of the 9-step process. Fluidity, flow, right? No rigidity when it comes to water at all, right? We need to remember that. And therefore, life becomes superfluous, effortless, easy, buoyant. That's where you want it. Now, if it's not there, then you need to change something. To change something, you need to become aware. In order to become aware, you need to see. Once you see, then you can start to think, start to step, overcome your fears, and then start to act eventually, right? So this is a process. This is a process. And you know what? These world's problems, right, are constantly changing shape, okay? But do the best you can right now. Let's get arm in arms with our brothers and sisters on this planet, okay, and make some positive change. This is what we're here to do, is to walk together in this journey we call life. It's too short. If I get hit by a bus tomorrow, that's it, I'm done for. But I know when I meet my maker that I've tried to make a positive imprint and impact in the world by sharing some wisdom that I was lucky and blessed to learn through hardship and suffering. None of this came to me, while I was sleeping in bed or, eating a nice meal. It happened through suffering, okay? And transcending the lesson, seeing the lessons in it and transcending them and really becoming an embodiment of those lessons so I can give those lessons. Right? That's what qualification means. I became qualified through experience, right? And also trainings as well, right? So it's not just I've experienced this and now I can go and tell the world how to do this, right? A lot of self-investment into trainings, learnings, courses, thousands of pounds, tens of thousands of pounds over the years, Why? Because the best investment you can make is in yourself. We're saying what I'm saying is, if it starts with you, then why are you not investing in yourself? Everyone should invest in themselves. If you're not investing in yourself and you're investing in, I don't know, a nice sofa, doing up the interior of your house, buying a nice vehicle or clothes or whatever, it's all external stuff. What difference does that make if internally you're corroding away, your sword of consciousness is rusty and blunt? Who cares, right?
And without you, none of this exists, right? In this form of you're experiencing what you experience. Without you, it doesn't exist. So you might as well share the experience and make the most of it.
Exactly. None of it exists. And you know what? You start to live inauthentically as well. Okay. And to live authentically, to honestly express yourself, is really understanding what your truth is. That's why this book's called Original Truth, because really what we're talking about is your original truth is not just about the truth you live life by. That's just your beliefs. Okay. Original truth is, what is your spiritual essence? Yeah. And you live by it. That, when you're aligned with that, we call that your dharma or dharma or dharmic path, right? Or your path of righteousness. Now, righteousness doesn't mean you're better than anyone else. Okay. What it means is that
truth for living.
Yes. Beautifully said. Beautifully said, right? So let's live truthfully.
The quote that reminded me is Guru Nanak quote. He said, "Truth is great, but greater still is truth for living." And that ties nicely with honestly expressing yourself. It's that about you, exactly what you said. It's about honestly expressing yourself. You could be lying, but long as you know you're lying. Do you know what I mean? You're telling the truth because you know you are. You're not doing it because you're just on autopilot. And you're consciously aware of what you're doing. It's different to autopilot.
Absolutely. And what's in Gurmukhi or Punjabi, where that quote that you just said, how does that play out?
Which one? The one the Guru
one that you just said, yeah.
I'm not 100% sure whereabouts it is. I just read it somewhere at one stage and it just sunk with me. So I can't remember exactly what page whereabouts and the bigger context around it. But it is about truth for living. It's quite similar to what we talk about, honestly expressing yourself.
Yeah.
Because if you're lying to yourself, you're lying to the world, pretty much.
100%. The reason I asked you that is I just love the sayings in the mother tongue language.
Yeah.
Is poetic. So that's the only reason I asked, really.
No, I'm gonna have to dig it out.
You're like, damn.
Where is it? Yeah.
And so there's one other thing I wanted to share was a teaching that you taught me, and that is again about justice. Okay. And standing up to justice. Remember, the whole topic here is, we're still cruising at 30,000 feet. We're looking at the problems down at the ground zero on Mother Earth, right? In the socio-political, economic, technological environment, right? Which is life. Okay. And how do we stand up to justice? Well, there's a beautiful teaching you taught me. Do you know which one I'm going to come up with?
There could be many, like that.
You taught me this again. A Sikh teaching is Sant Sipahi, right? Remember, right? So you want to explain this, because this is a life changer, guys. So listen to this closely.
So the Sant Sipahi basically means saint soldier. If you look at it, so it's like the soft and the hard together. You have the softer side, which is to do with learning, education, training, understanding, and then you got the harder side, which is the solidification of that understanding. So it's the element of, you could say, the yin and the yang, the soft and the hard together in one form. if you look at it on a cosmic level, you have construction, destruction going on, right? So you have the saintly side of nature and you have the destructive side, which is, you could say, is the warrior side as well. So those things working together in balance, we're saintly first. We live our lives by being saintly and doing what we can to help others. And you become a warrior when you need to be a warrior in order to defend that same right to protect others and stand up for a just cause.
Absolutely. So I would just want to add a little bit more to that. And that is this. Often, especially in the Western society, silence, compassion, and kindness is considered as weakness. Okay. Right. So saints are considered weak. Okay. In that respect. Now, here's the thing, right? The saintliness, that kindness, compassion is what the world is missing. Right. And if we start to ignore that, our world becomes too hard. I mean, let's face it, where the fuck has that got us today? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. Where are we right now? Right. Looking down, right. 30,000 feet, looking down on Mother Earth and all the problems that mankind has created, right. Through the greed of power, control, and money, right. We've got all this plethora of problems right now. So in order to restore that, we've got to reintroduce kindness, compassion, and kindness, compassion. And in order to reintroduce kindness, compassion, we've got to reconnect with our saintly side. Now, the other side of saintliness is, all right, it's weakness, right? If you're saintly, people walk all over you, right? They walk over you like you're some kind of doormat. Well, do you know what? They don't call it Sabahi for no reason, right? That's when the Sabahi stands, yeah? The warrior stands, that soldier stands, right? Against injustice, right? Now, you don't have to whip that sword out and start slaying. Remember, we already spoke about this, right? That's when the soldier stands. And guess what? A lot of people back away. Why? Because they know they fucked up. They know they're wrong. Their conscience is already telling them, right? You're doing wrong. You're pushing it, but their greed is allowing them to carry on and justifying their actions, but it's unjust. Yeah. And it just takes somebody to stand up, right? Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not saying go out there, start rioting and protesting and making a noise. What I'm saying is start acting consciously. And when you act consciously and you feel this, then if you've got a voice, right, that you can speak with ecology, right, with congruency. Ecology means, keeping peace and harmony in the world, and congruency meaning keeping peace and harmony in yourself. Yeah, you could do that, whether it's on petitions or whether it is attending a debate or whether it is attending a silent march or whatever it might be. I don't see anything wrong with that, because I think the whole point is, if something's not right, you must change it. You must do something about it. In order to do something about it, there's people like us that are just trying to raise, educate, inspire, and empower people around these topics and how to act and carry themselves through life using a martial code, right? Right. To cultivate their best side and put the best side forwards.
That reminds me of the Rocky movie, right? when he's fighting the gentleman in that tall guy, I can't remember his name, but he so in I think it was Rocky 3, his friend went up against him and got killed, right? Yeah. And then Rocky had to go and fight this gentleman, and he said to his wife, he said, listen, the guy's gonna have to take me out in order to get past it. He was ready to lay down his life, right, for something that was not a good thing, right? Yeah. And it was just interesting, because when we were saying that, it's like, I think when the warrior element steps up, yeah, it's like it's battle, it's combat time. It's like, how far is this going to go now? Yeah, and it can get messy. All right. So that's why, like you were saying, that one side thinks, oh no, we've messed up now, we can't go down that route. And we're not absolutely not saying that's what you got to do. We're just saying that, be saintly, man. Go out there, like you said, Lax. I think you're so right. People are forgotten to be kind. They've just forgotten how to be kind and considerate of other people and compassionate. What's wrong? Why not? That's what we want to teach our kids. Why say hello to someone, just smile. Like, what's wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with it.
Absolutely. And the takeaway from today's podcast is don't fight. Be kind, compassionate, and loving, really. Because love, and I'm not talking about a sexualized love. I'm not talking about an infatuated love. I'm not talking about a love for some material object. I'm talking about, a cosmic love, right? Which is way above and beyond, is the highest vibration. But a lot of people will not experience that because they're not putting the time into sitting quietly in stillness, listening to their higher self, okay? And tuning into the cosmic radio, right? So until you really start doing that, you're not going to really experience that. But the closest thing to that is compassion, right? An act of kindness, yeah? An act of kindness, lending an ear, listening to someone or talking to someone, humanizing someone. And, there's a million and one different ways you could do that. Find your own way. Find your own way of doing that to make somebody else's day a better day. One little thing. Maybe you send someone a message. Maybe you send them a funny little GIF, right? Or something to make them laugh. Guess what? You've just touched their heart. Because in the end, we're all heading in the same direction. And that is one day we're going to die, right? And when we die, the only thing that's going to be left is the imprint, your positive imprint you leave on people's bodies, minds, hearts, and spirits. Okay. Right. And if you've left negative imprints, you fucked up. Right. But idea is to leave the positive imprints in people's bodies, minds, hearts, souls, spirits. Okay. And if you can do that and you can die peacefully, knowing that you've left that behind, then you've done great. You've done great. So just remember that, and what JT was just talking about a moment ago was learning the art of dying while you're alive, right? Laying your life down for a cause, but not in an aggressive way unless necessitated, right? And again, that's a whole new conversation, but we're not condoning violence, even though it's a martial arts podcast. The whole idea is the art of fighting without fighting. How can we work together arm in arm, right? And move forward, right? So there's a lot of food for thought there, guys. But remember, keep it simple. It's about cultivating your consciousness and you acting consciously on a daily basis. Making one small change, making that habit, and then making another small change, making a habit, and people will notice and it'll start spreading. And there's a lot of positive things that are already happening in the world. Start to be grateful for those things. Start to notice those things. Notice what you notice. And you'll start to realize, actually, there is the same, if not more good on this planet than all the stuff that is not serving us. So look a bit more closely, but you need to, in order to do that, you need to start to see. Okay. Remember we talked about seeing. So hopefully that's giving you some food for thought, giving you some ideas on what to work on. Hopefully we've educated, inspired, and empowered you to move in a positive direction. And collectively, we can make this world a better place to live in.
No, definitely. Thank you for sharing, Sifu Lak. I mean, just like a simple 3 things that, that come up is that, be present, empty your mind in regards to that, have courage, be courageous. And I suppose the biggest thing is just be ready, get ready to be hit, because if you're going out there, then that's what we're afraid of. But we go into learn about combat, we put gloves on, we spar against each other. And the whole idea of sparring is that we're going to get hit so we can experience what it feels like to get hit. And that's what we're afraid of, but it's going to happen, right? So it's not something to be afraid of, but just be ready that preparation wise, I suppose, is that's a possibility. So thank you for sharing that, Sifu Lak. And I think that's been very useful. And I hope you guys have liked it. And again, if you want to find out more, go to mastermindpower.com, check out the books, The Art of Thinking Without Thinking. There's Original Truth and Master Your Life. And you can find them on Amazon as well. So on that note, if there's anything else, Sifu Lak, we're going to be signing off.
No, just keep sharpening that sword. Just keep sharpening that sword. Right.
Absolutely.
Brilliant, guys.
There you go, folks. Thank you very much.